Hi guys, so I am here today to show you my much awaited Oxford World Classics collection video. They are on my bed because they couldn't fit on my little table, so they do kind of, they've sunk in a wee bit to the quilt. But I'll make sure to go through them all individually, so don't worry, you won't miss any. Unsurprisingly, the majority of these books are classical literature, but not all, so you shall see as we go through. So first is the Oxford World Classics collection, the complete poems of Catullus. This one actually features parallel Latin text along with the English translation, which is not a feature of all the Oxford World Classic translations of ancient works, but it is in this one, so if you're a Latin fan, this one's good, although it's still just a good translation even if you can't read the Latin next to it. Catullus was a Latin poet who worked in the 1st century BC. I've read a few of these, but I've never read this work from cover to cover. His poetry is elegiac, romantic, sometimes erotic, and pretty highly revered, so I do look forward to reading this one cover to cover. Next is a Greek bad boy, and this is Apollonius of Rhodes' Jason and the Golden Fleece, which is a translation by Richard Hunter of the Argonautica by Apollonius of Rhodes, which follows the story of Jason on his travel with the Argonauts to get the Golden Fleece from the kingdom of Iolcos, and he meets the princess Medea and they fall in love. Although to unfortunate ends in later myths starring them. This is an epic Greek poem from the 3rd century BC. This translation though is in prose, and I have read this many times. It has lots of tabs in it. It is pretty beat up. I did my undergraduate dissertation on this book and it is one of my favourites. Next we have Ovid's Fasti. I have not read this one yet. It is by the famous Latin poet Ovid from the Roman Empire, 1st century. And this is a poetical calendar of the Roman year, featuring many Roman Greek goddesses. We then have another Greek. Funnily enough, we seem to have been going Latin, Greek, and also unread, read. The Latin ones being the unread ones. This is another one I have read, and it is a collection of short idylls, which are poems by Theocritus, who again was another Hellenistic author, and his poems are usually bucolic, either following the everyday life of people in Alexandria or in the countryside, occasionally include mythological characters and little love stories. Good collection, love. And back to the Latin, we then have Ovid's Metamorphosis, which no, I have not read cover to cover yet. It is probably my most embarrassing have not read of classical literature, although I do intend on reading it from cover to cover at some point, and I've read snippets of it. This is probably Ovid's most famous work, and it is an epic poem, originally written in Latin, and it features many famous ancient myths in there, and it follows the theme of change, as the title implies, all of the myths usually being about characters in mythology who change into something else. And back to Greek, we have Aristophanes' Birds and Other Plays. This is a collection of Aristophanes' comic plays. He was a writer of old comedy, although it wasn't called old comedy at the time, but that's kind of the term for the genre these days. This includes Birds, Lysistrata, The Assemblywomen and Wealth. I have read Birds, Lysistrata and The Assemblywomen. His plays are often full of toilet humour, but also sometimes political commentary. We then have some Latin comedy with Plautus and his 4 comedies collected in this volume. Plautus is said to have done much in influencing Western comedy and definitely influenced some of Shakespeare plays. I haven't actually read this one yet, but I'm looking forward to. So far I've read none of the Latin pieces I've shown you and all of the Greek ones I have. Interesting. I then have Euripides, Medea and Other Plays. This is a collection of the tragedian Euripides plays, another 5th century writer in Greece. This collection includes Medea, Hippolytus, Electra and Helen. I have read Medea, Hippolytus and Helen. Having enjoyed all of them, Helen is actually my favourite, surprisingly not Medea, although I read Medea a long time ago and do need to reread it. I've also seen performances of Electra, although I have not read it. And Euripides often takes traditional Greek myths, which is a theme of most Greek tragedies, but often makes quite a noticeable change to the original story, or uses a less recited version of the myth to kind of surprise his audience. Next we have Ovid, the Love Poems, a new translation by A.D. Melville. I haven't read most of this edition of these poems. I've read a different translation, which is the Penguin translation, but I have read all of these poems, and this is one of my favourite pieces of literature, and it's actually a piece of Latin literature. This is Ovid, separated into two main parts, one being the Ars Amatoria and the other being the Amores being just various little love poems that Ovid wrote, and the other being a didactic poem teaching men how to pick up women, with a bonus chapter at the end telling women how to keep their man, and it is absolutely hilarious. Love this collection. We then have selected speeches of Demosthenes, which is the first truly non-fiction piece from this collection. These are court speeches that would have been delivered in Athenian courts during Demosthenes' life. Demosthenes wrote court speeches, sometimes for himself, sometimes for other people. It was kind of like a job that people did. Demosthenes definitely has one of the largest corpuses of surviving speeches left. I've read a selection of these, but not all of them. And yeah, I really enjoy reading ancient court speeches. It comes a lot into my research, and I think it's a really fascinating area of Greek history and literature. Sticking with the Greeks, we have Greek lyric poetry, a new translation by M.L. West, and this is just a collection of various different Greek poets. We've got some Sappho in here, some Simonides, and a few others, and again, I've read some of this, but haven't read all of it. We then have Achilles Tatius's Leucippe and Clitophon, translated by Tim Whitmarsh, one of my favourite ancient Greek scholars, and this is again one of my favourite ancient Greek pieces of literature. This one was actually written during the Roman Empire in the 2nd century AD and is an ancient Greek novel. Yes, it was originally written in prose. Ancient Greek novel is one of my favourite genres of ancient Greek literature, if not my all-time favourite, and this is probably my second favourite, although I like it for very different reasons to my favourite ancient Greek novel. I personally consider this book to be a parody of its genre, and it's really funny. It follows two young people who wish to be married and run away from home and keep getting separated in a disastrous adventure. But speaking of novels, we then have a Latin novel. This is Petronius's The Satyricon, a new translation by P.G. Walsh. This book actually survives only fragmentary, so it's not a tiny book, although it's not huge either. The original would have been so much larger than this. This is only a very small portion of it, and only one chapter survives in full, which is the dinner at Trimalchio's. But even so, it is still an absolutely hilarious read. You can generally understand the plot as it goes, although sometimes it jumps to scenes and you've kind of missed little bits here and there, but sometimes it's quite fun to fill in the blanks, and it still reads really funny, and it kind of mocks Nero's empire. There's also a Fellini film based on this book, but yeah, I would highly recommend this one. It's really funny, although it's very crude. Then we have Lucretius's On the Nature of the Universe, translated by Ronald Melville. This is a ancient Greek poem, didactic poem, and this is a verse translation of it, and it is again a sort of non-fiction piece. It is a philosophical poem teaching the reader all about Epicurean philosophy. I love this book, one of my favourite pieces of ancient literature. Really interesting. Epicurean philosophy believed in atomism and no life after death and all those kind of things, so it's really interesting. But then let's look at my two pieces of non-ancient literature I have in these editions. The first being The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Yes, the author of Sherlock Holmes wrote a science fiction novel or adventure novel about a part of the world where strange creatures exist. I have never actually finished this book. I did start it on holiday once a few years ago. I got to page 71, but I've yet to finish it, and we'll probably have to start from the beginning again when I do choose to. But I was really enjoying it. It has a very similar writing style to Sherlock Holmes, of course, and I am looking forward to starting this one again. We then have Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Marble Faun. This is the author of, I was going to say Easy A there, The Scarlet Letter, and this is a book recommended to me by my friend Sana over Books and Quills, and I've yet to read it yet, but I am very excited to, and it's about a group of young people who go travelling in Europe and meet a kind of barbarian young man who they try to civilise, and there's lots of classical references in there. The young people are students of the classics themselves, so yeah, can't wait to read this one. Then have some speeches by Plato, Defence of Socrates, Euthyphro and Crito. 3 of Plato's speeches. Plato was an ancient Greek philosopher, probably one of the most famous ones. You've probably heard his name before. He was a student of Socrates, in fact, and I have read the Defence of Socrates, but not the other 2 in this collection. Then have one that's not Roman or Greek, although even more ancient, and this is The Tale of Sinuhe and Other Ancient Egyptian Poems from 1940 to 1640 BC. So almost 4,000 years ago here. I haven't read this one, although I really do need to, because it would be very interesting to read some ancient Egyptian literature. But back to the Romans, we have Virgil's Aeneid, a new translation by Frederick Ahl. I have read this book. I'm not crazy about this. I've yet to really enjoy any Virgil which I have read, although I know my opinion is not the most popular one with this book. Lots of people really like the Aeneid. It is an epic poem following the hero Aeneas after the Trojan War, as he sets out on his journey as the founder of Rome. Again, like I said, not crazy about this. Enjoyed the first half far more than the second half though, and it is often divided by people into 2 halves, one being called the Odyssean half and the other the Iliadic half. Next we have the plays and fragments of Menander. This Menander wrote new comedy, and like I said, Aristophanes wrote old comedy, so Menander wrote a lot later, and his comedy is kind of in a different style, but these are comic plays. I've read, I think, about half of this collection. I've read all the ones that survive in a more complete form. These are more plays about just ordinary people's lives, often love stories, although there's a lot of sexual assault in them as well. But we won't go into sexual assault in Greek literature in this video because I'm slightly tired of talking about it right now, as it is one of the topics of my PhD. These are kind of the equivalent for ancient Greece of sitcoms. Apollodorus is the Library of Greek Mythology, a great one to start with if you want to get into ancient Greek literature and myths in particular. This is just a massive collection of ancient Greek myths written down by the ancient Greek Apollodorus, originally called the Bibliotheca. It is translated by Robin Hard, and I've read maybe half of this book, but I haven't read it from cover to cover yet. We then have Pindar, the Complete Odes, translated by Anthony Verity, another one that collects together a lot of different Greek myths in one place, so another good one to check out if you're interested in mythology. Again, this is another one where I've read a selection of the stories but haven't read it cover to cover. And last, but certainly not least, is Hesiod's Theogony and Works and Days. These are 2 poems by Hesiod. This is a very short book. The Theogony tells the story of the war between the gods and the kind of birth of all the different gods, their family tree and all that. And then the second, Works and Days, is kind of it is a didactic poem, which is kind of meant to teach mortals good kind of moral values and how to live their lives. Hesiod wrote it for his kind of wayward brother, and this is one that I enjoy, although Hesiod was a bit of a misogynist, but it's hard to say that most Greek male writers weren't. And those are all of my Oxford World Classics, for the time being, that is. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry it was such a long one. If you want to see more of these collection videos, let me know. I think I've got a couple of other collections I can show you, but I'll link the ones I've already filmed down below. So until next time guys, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon.